25 years after the Council's visit, the galaxy had changed in ways no one expected. News of humanity's survival spread despite the Council's attempts to control the information. Other species, especially those who felt oppressed or marginalized by the Council's rules, began to hear stories about the impossible world. They heard about humans who turned a death sentence into a garden. They heard about a place where hard work mattered more than political favor. The first non-human to request asylum was unexpected. His name was Krell, and he was from a species that resembled four-armed bears covered in gray fur. His people had been conquered by the Council centuries ago and forced to accept strict population limits. Krell had 6 children, 2 more than his species was allowed. The Council had ordered him to surrender the youngest 2 to be raised by the state. Instead, Krell stole a small ship and fled. He made it to New Haven's orbital space with fuel tanks nearly empty and life support failing. His message was simple. I heard you help those who need it. Please, I will do any work. Just let my family stay together. Jin, Taeyang's daughter and the new governor at age 35, called an emergency council meeting. She was younger than her father had been when he took leadership, but she had inherited his confidence and added her own compassion. We cannot turn him away, Jin argued. What we built here we built because the Council rejected us. How can we reject others who suffer the same injustice? Some colonists disagreed. We barely have enough resources for our own people, one council member argued. Bringing in aliens will strain our systems. Our systems were built to handle challenges, Jin countered. This planet itself was supposed to be impossible. One refugee family is nothing compared to that. Besides, what we do now defines who we are. Do we become another version of the Council, worried only about ourselves, or do we become something better? The vote was close, but Jin won. Krell and his family were granted asylum. Within months, others arrived. A group of scientists fleeing persecution for their research. A religious community whose beliefs were banned by the Council. Families from species that the Council considered inferior and denied basic rights. They came in small ships, sometimes barely spaceworthy, carrying nothing but hope. Jin welcomed them all. The population grew beyond human numbers, reaching 30 million, then 35, then 40. The newcomers brought skills and knowledge that enriched the colony. A reptilian engineer improved the atmospheric processors, and aquatic species helped develop water purification systems that were far more efficient. But success brought attention, and not all of it was friendly. Ambassador Velthar, now ancient and moving with mechanical assistance, led a hardline faction in the Council that viewed New Haven as a threat. They harbor criminals and outcasts, he declared in council sessions. They undermine our authority. They must be controlled or eliminated. But Velthar's power had weakened. A moderate faction, led by Councillor Kelmar of the reptilian species, had been growing for decades. Kelmar was younger than most council members and had never supported the human exile. What crime did those refugees commit? Kelmar asked the council. They had too many children. They thought differently. They wanted freedom. Are these reasons to persecute them? Perhaps we should examine why so many beings choose to flee to a former death world, rather than live under our protection. The debate raged for years. Meanwhile, New Haven continued to transform. The atmosphere reached breathable levels across 40% of the surface. Real rain fell regularly in 3 major regions. The first natural lake formed in what had been a crater, filled by rain and underground springs. Native plants evolved from Earth species but adapted to local conditions, began to spread beyond the domes. Taeyang, now 75, spent his days in a small house near that first lake. His body ached from decades of work in high gravity, but his mind remained sharp. He watched his grandchildren play by the water, splashing and laughing. One child, his granddaughter Nari, ran up to him with something in her hands. "Grandfather, look. I found a fish." Taeyang examined it carefully. It was small, barely the length of his finger, with scales that shimmered in colors that looked wrong for an earthfish. "Where did you find this?" "In the lake." "There are lots of them." Taeyang stood slowly and walked to the water's edge. In the clear shallows, he could see small fish swimming. They were not supposed to be there. The lake was too new, and no one had introduced fish yet. He contacted Minho, who was 80 now and officially retired but still working every day. The old scientist came out with his equipment and spent hours studying the fish. They evolved from our stocked fish, Minho finally announced, wonder in his voice. They adapted to the local water chemistry, which is different from Earth. This happened naturally. The planet is creating its own new species now. True terraforming is happening. News of the native fish spread across New Haven. It was proof that the planet was not just supporting transplanted Earth life, but creating something new. The dead world had truly become alive. In the Galactic Council, the debates reached a breaking point. Velthar demanded a blockade of New Haven, wanting to prevent more refugees from arriving. Kelmar and his moderates refused to support it. We cannot blockade them without declaring war, Kelmar argued, and I will not vote for war against people whose only crime was surviving against our expectations. The council split nearly in half. Dozens of species recalled their representatives in protest. The great alliance that had ruled the galaxy for centuries began to fracture. Jin received a private message from Kelmar. Can you help us? Not with weapons or threats. But we have worlds in the council that need assistance. Planets damaged by industrial pollution, overpopulation, failing ecosystems. Your terraforming technology could save billions of lives. Jin brought the proposal to her people. The debate was intense. Some wanted to punish the council for what they had done. Others, including Taeyang, saw a different path. Revenge means nothing, Taeyang told the assembly, his voice weak but clear. They hurt us, yes. They tried to destroy us. But we survived by being better than they expected. Now we can prove we are better than they deserve. We help because it is right, not because they earned it. The colony voted to assist. Teams of human and alien engineers traveled to council worlds, bringing atmospheric processors, radiation collectors, and soil reclamation technology. They taught desperate species how to heal their dying worlds. Not everyone appreciated it. Velthar and his faction saw it as humiliation, charity from those they had tried to destroy. But the species whose worlds were saved did not care about politics. They cared that their children would have air to breathe and food to eat. 5 years later, the council formally invited humanity to return to galactic society. The invitation included an official apology and recognition of New Haven as an independent world with full sovereign rights. Jin stood before the council to accept. We never left galactic society. We were forced away, yes, but we remained part of the galaxy. We built something beautiful on a world you gave us to die on. Now we share that knowledge freely because we believe in helping others, even those who did not help us. Velthar was not present. The old insectoid had finally retired, his political power gone. But many who had once supported the exile now stood and applauded Jin's words. Taeyang watched the ceremony from his home by the lake. He was too old to travel now, content to spend his final years surrounded by his family. Jin had sent him a live feed and he smiled as he watched her speak. Grandfather, why are you crying? Nari asked. I am not sad, Taeyang assured her. I am happy. When I was young, this world was gray and dead. I have lived long enough to see it bloom. That is a gift few people receive. That evening, Taeyang walked slowly to a monument in central Seedfall. It was a simple black wall with names carved into it. Thousands and thousands of names. These were the people who died in the first years, those who did not live to see the planet transform. At the base of the monument, an inscription read, "They gave us a tomb." We built a garden. Taeyang placed flowers at the wall, real flowers grown in native soil under an open sky. We did it, he whispered to the names. We proved them wrong. Above him, the sky was a pale blue with scattered clouds. Rain would come tonight, the weather system predicted. Real rain from a real atmosphere created by the hard work of millions. Children played in a nearby park, human children and alien children together, not caring about species or history. They only knew that New Haven was their home, a place where anyone could belong if they were willing to work for it. Taeyang sat on a bench and watched the sunset. The star that warmed this world was not Earth's sun, and the colors were slightly different because of the atmospheric composition. But it was beautiful in its own unique way. He thought about the council that had sent them here to die. He thought about Hana, who refused to accept defeat. He thought about Day, Minho, Yuna, Jiwan, and countless others who turned the impossible into reality. Most of all, he thought about his grandchildren and all the children of New Haven. They would inherit a living world, one that would continue to grow more beautiful with each passing year. The dead planet had flowered. And humanity, alongside those who joined them, had proven that life finds a way when people refuse to surrender. Scout Commander Threx had been given what he thought was the easiest assignment in the Galactic Fleet: travel to Kepler 442c, confirm that the humans were extinct, and file the final report. It should have taken 3 days. His ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, and Threx immediately knew something was wrong. The sensors showed artificial satellites orbiting the planet. That should have been impossible. The satellites should have failed decades ago without maintenance. Scan the surface, he ordered his crew. The results made no sense. The sensors detected power signatures, massive ones scattered across 3 continents. They found atmospheric processing plants, dome structures, and what appeared to be entire cities underground. The population reading came back at 22 million. The sensors are malfunctioning, Threx said. Run full diagnostics. His second officer, a methodical being from a species that never made mistakes, checked everything twice. Sensors are functioning correctly, Commander. The readings are accurate. There are 22 million humans on that planet, and they are alive. Threx stared at the planet below. The last time anyone from the Council had seen it, Kepler 442c had been gray and lifeless. Now patches of the surface showed different colors: green, blue, brown. The planet was changing. This should not be possible, Threx whispered. He sent an emergency message to the Galactic Council and received orders within hours. Land. Investigate. Determine how humanity survived. Most importantly, assess whether they posed any threat. The shuttle descended toward the coordinates provided by the humans. Yes, the humans had detected his ship and sent landing coordinates. They knew he was coming and were not trying to hide. Taeyang stood on the landing pad as the alien shuttle touched down. He was 47 now, governor of the entire colony by popular election. His hair was starting to gray, but he remained strong and confident. Behind him stood Sora, the head of external affairs, and Hyun, who coordinated the colony's defensive preparations. Threx emerged from the shuttle and immediately noticed the atmosphere. It was thin but present, where before there had been only vacuum and toxic gas. He wore a breathing apparatus but realized that in some areas it might not be necessary much longer. "Welcome to New Haven," Taeyang said, using the planet's new name. "Though I suppose you still call it Kepler 442c. Threx looked around at the landing complex. It was clean, modern, and efficiently designed. "How are you alive?" "The Council said this planet could not support life." "The Council was correct," Sora replied smoothly. She was a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "It could not support life, so we changed the planet." Over the next 3 days, Taeyang gave Threx and his crew a complete tour. They visited Seedfall, where underground tunnels stretched for hundreds of kilometers. They saw the atmospheric processors that were slowly creating breathable air. They toured surface domes where forests grew and children played. Threx watched children running through grass, laughing and chasing each other. They were strong, these children, moving easily in the higher gravity that made his own movements feel heavy and awkward. "The young ones were born here," Taeyang explained. "They have never known another world. To them, this is not a prison planet. This is home." They visited Minho's research facility, where the old scientists showed them engineered bacteria under microscopes. "We created life that could survive here," Minho explained. "Then we used that life to transform the environment. It took decades, but the results speak for themselves." Jiwon demonstrated the radiation collectors, opening one during a minor storm. Threx watched in fascination as deadly radiation was converted into clean power. "You turned the planet's weapon against you into a resource," he said. "We had to," Jiwon replied. "There was no other choice. Adapt or die. We chose to adapt." On the final day, Sora presented Threx with a gift: a simple flower grown in Kepler 4R42c soil, under Kepler 4R42c sky, watered by Kepler 4R42c rain. The flower was small and its color was slightly off, but it was real. "Take this back to the Council," Sora said. "Tell them what you saw here. Tell them that humanity survived." Threx held the flower carefully. "They will not believe me. They will say the reports are exaggerated or false." "Then bring them here," Taeyang suggested. "Let them see for themselves." Velthar arrived with a full delegation 3 months later. The insectoid leader had aged in the decades since the exile, moving more slowly. his mandibles clicking less sharply, but his arrogance remained. "This is some trick," he declared upon seeing the landing complex. "Humans are clever liars. You have built a facade to hide your true situation." Taeyang smiled coldly. "Then inspect everything. We hide nothing." For 2 weeks, the delegation examined every aspect of the colony. They reviewed population records, inspected the atmospheric data, and analyzed the soil composition. They toured cities and farms and research facilities. They interviewed colonists randomly selected from the population. Every piece of evidence told the same story. Humanity had not just survived on Kepler 442c, they had thrived. Councillor Breck, the reptilian who had voted for exile, stood in a surface dome and looked at the trees growing there. "We gave you a death sentence," he said to Taeyang. "You turned it into this. How?" "We refused to accept death," Taeyang answered simply. "You gave us no choice but to succeed or die. We chose success." The delegation returned to the landing pad for departure. Velthar had been silent for days, clearly struggling with what he had seen. Finally he spoke. "The Council must discuss this situation. Humanity was exiled to prevent your expansion. But you have expanded anyway, just on this one world. We cannot allow this to continue unchecked." Sora stepped forward. "You cannot stop it. What authority do you have here? This planet is outside Council jurisdiction. You gave it to us, remember? You renounced all claims when you exiled us. We could impose sanctions," Velthar threatened. "Prevent you from trading with other species." Hyun spoke for the first time. He was a quiet man, ex-military who had spent decades building defensive capabilities that the colony hoped never to use. "You could try. But we have had decades to prepare. We do not have weapons of aggression, but we have very good defenses. Any attempt to remove us from this world would cost you greatly." Velthar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of anger or frustration. "You threaten the Council?" "No," Taeyang said firmly. "We simply state facts. You sent us here to die. We did not die. You have no legal or moral authority over us anymore. If you try to impose your will by force, we will defend ourselves." "That is not a threat. That is a promise." The delegation left without another word. Threx, departing last, paused to speak with Taeyang privately. "Some of us on the Council admire what you have accomplished," the scout commander said quietly. "Not all species agreed with your exile. Some of us argued against it. But you did not stop it," Taeyang replied. "No, we did not. And that is a failure we must live with." Threx looked back at the domes and cities visible in the distance. "What will you do now? Will you seek revenge against those who banished you?" Taeyang shook his head. "Revenge accomplishes nothing. We will continue building our world. We will continue growing stronger. And when the Council is ready to treat us as equals instead of threats, we will be ready to talk. Until then, we have work to do." Threx nodded and boarded his shuttle. As it lifted off, he took one last look at the planet below. Where there had been only gray death, now there was the beginning of life. The humans had accomplished something that should have been impossible. The Galactic Council would have to decide what that meant. 20 years passed on Kepler 442c, and the planet began to change. Day stood inside the largest dome ever built by human hands, a structure 5 kilometers across that covered part of the Seedfall Valley. He was 60 now, his hair completely gray and his back permanently bent from decades of work in the higher gravity. But his eyes were bright as he watched the construction crews complete the final sections. "The atmospheric processor will go there," he told his assistant, pointing to a massive foundation. "Once active, it will pull carbon dioxide from the air and break it down. The carbon we use for building materials, the oxygen we release." His assistant, a young woman born on Kepler 442c, looked skeptical. "One machine cannot change a planet's atmosphere." "No," Day agreed. "But 1,000 machines can start the process. And we have plans for 10,000. He smiled at her doubt. Young people born here did not remember Earth. They had never seen a blue sky or felt rain. To them, this gray world was normal. "You will see. Give us another 20 years." Minho's work had transformed agriculture across the colony. His engineered bacteria now covered thousands of square kilometers, slowly breaking down the toxic soil and creating something that could support more complex life. Inside the domes, strange forests grew, trees that were short and thick to handle the gravity, with leaves that were almost black to absorb every bit of light. "They are not beautiful," Minho admitted to Hana during one of her visits. He was 50 now. no longer the optimistic young man who had arrived. The years had made him quieter, more thoughtful. But beauty is not the goal. Survival is the goal. These trees produce oxygen and create soil. That is all that matters. Hana, now 75 and moving slowly, touched one of the dark leaves. I think they are beautiful. They live where nothing should live. What could be more beautiful than that? The underground cities had expanded into vast networks. Seedfall was now the capital, connected by maglev trains to 15 other settlements. The total population had grown to 15 million through careful planning and steady birth rates. Every child born on Kepler 442c was stronger than their Earth-born parents, adapted to the harsh conditions in ways that fascinated the medical teams. But the most important breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Jiwan was 23, part of the second generation of colonists. She had been born during the voyage from Earth and had no memories of any world except this one. Her talent for physics had shown itself early, and she had spent the last 5 years studying Kepler 442c's radiation problems. "We have been thinking about this wrong," she explained to the Council of Leaders. "We treat the radiation as an enemy, something to hide from. But it is energy, enormous amounts of energy that we are wasting." Day leaned forward, interested. "You can harness it?" "I believe so. The radiation storms are predictable. We can build collectors that will absorb the energy and store it. One storm could power Seedfall for a month." Jiwan displayed her calculations. "The planet is trying to kill us with radiation. We can turn that into unlimited power." It took 3 years to build the first radiation collector. It looked like a massive flower made of metal and crystals, 10 meters across and designed to unfold during storms. The first test was terrifying. As the storm approached, the collector opened like a bloom, its panels catching the streams of deadly particles. Jiwan watched the power readings climb higher and higher. The collectors held. The energy flowed into massive batteries. When the storm passed, Seedfall had enough power to run every system at full capacity for 6 weeks. "The problem just became the solution," Jiwan said, grinning. Within 5 years, radiation collectors dotted the landscape around every settlement. Power was no longer a concern. The colony could run massive atmospheric processors, enormous dome systems, and still have energy to spare. Humans had turned the planet's deadliest feature into their greatest resource. Taeyang emerged as a leader among the youth. Born on Kepler 442c, he had never breathed Earth's air or seen Earth's sun. He was 25, tall and strong from growing up in higher gravity, with a voice that made people listen. "The older generation still thinks of this as exile," he told his followers. "They remember Earth and wish they could return. But we were born here. This is not our prison. This is our home. We should stop trying to survive and start trying to thrive." His words resonated with thousands of young people who felt the same way. They began pushing for more aggressive terraforming, faster expansion, and recognition that Kepler 442c was not a temporary stop, but humanity's future. In year 24, the first surface garden bloomed inside a biodome. Real grass, green and soft, grew in soil that had been toxic waste 2 decades earlier. Flowers, actual earth flowers, opened their petals under artificial lights that mimicked the sun. People came from across the colony to see it. Many cried. Even those born on Kepler 442c were moved by the sight of colors they had only seen in pictures. The garden became a symbol of what was possible, proof that the dead planet could support life. Hana, now 93 and confined to a wheelchair, visited the garden with Day's help. She could barely walk anymore, her body worn out from decades of hard work and stress, but her mind remained sharp. "It is more beautiful than I imagined," she whispered, touching a rose petal with trembling fingers. "You made this possible," Day told her. "When everyone else wanted to give up, you told us to keep working." Hana shook her head. "I just refused to accept death. All of you did the work. All of you made the impossible happen." That night, the atmospheric readings showed something remarkable. In a region covered by Minho's bacteria and surrounded by processors, the oxygen content had reached 3%. It was still not breathable, but it was oxygen created by life and human technology working together. "The sky is changing," Jiwan reported to the council. "In another generation, maybe 2, parts of this planet will have breathable air." In year 25, the first rain fell on Kepler 442c. It was not much, Just a brief shower in the Seedfall Valley where atmospheric conditions allowed water vapor to condense. But it was rain, falling from clouds that humans had created, moistening soil that humans had made fertile. Hana watched it from her window, too weak now to go outside. Day stood with her, both of them crying as water ran down the dome's surface. "Tell them," Hana said softly. "Tell them we are just getting started." Those were her last words. Hana died that night with rain falling outside, having seen the first real sign that Kepler 442c could become truly alive. The colony mourned her for a week. Then, as she would have wanted, they returned to work. Day expanded the atmospheric processor network to cover 3 continents. Minho spread his engineered bacteria across 10 million square kilometers. Jiwan built collectors that could power entire cities. Taiyang led work crews that established settlements in regions that had been considered too dangerous just years before. The population reached 20 million. The underground cities became so large that people could walk for days without seeing the same street twice. The surface domes connected into networks, creating protected areas where children could play in grass and trees. The Galactic Council believed humanity was dead. They were wrong. Humanity was busy proving that even the deadliest world could bloom with enough determination and time. And above it all, the sky slowly changed from black to the faintest hint of blue. The first sight of Kepler 442c through the transport viewport made several colonists cry. The planet hung in space like a diseased eye, gray and mottled with darker patches, no blue oceans, no green continents, no white clouds. Just endless dust and rock under a black sky filled with radiation. Hana stood at the main observation deck, watching 3 ships ahead of them begin their descent. She held her breath, counting seconds. The lead ship entered the upper atmosphere and immediately its hull began glowing red from friction. Then the radiation storm hit. Lightning that was not really lightning tore through the sky, streams of charged particles that could cook a person inside their own skin. The lead transport's shields flickered and failed. Hana watched in horror as the ship tumbled, spinning out of control. It crashed into the surface with a flash of light that could be seen from orbit. 300 people had been on that ship. All transports abort landing. Hana commanded into the communication system. We wait for the storm to pass. For 6 hours the fleet orbited while radiation battered the planet below. Sensors showed the crashed ship as nothing but wreckage. There would be no survivors. Finally, the storm weakened enough to risk landing. Hana's transport touched down in what had once been an ancient lava flow. The ground was relatively flat, and more importantly, there were caves nearby. The ship's ramp lowered, and for the first time humans stepped onto their new home. The gravity was slightly stronger than Earth. The temperature was below freezing despite being daytime. The thin air was mostly carbon dioxide with traces of sulfur compounds that made it smell like rotten eggs. Every person wore a full environmental suit because one breath of that atmosphere would kill them. Day was the first to speak after they gathered outside. He was a short, stocky man with hands scarred from years of construction work. "Well," he said, his voice crackling through the suit's radio, "I have seen worse building sites. Not many, but some." A few people laughed nervously. Humor was good. It meant they had not given up yet. The first week was about survival. Teams explored the lava tubes and found them structurally sound. They were massive tunnels carved by molten rock millions of years ago, some large enough to fit entire buildings inside. The humans sealed the entrances with materials from the transport ships and created airlocks. Slowly, they built spaces where people could remove their suits and breathe. Water was the next challenge. Minho, the agricultural specialist, led the search. He was younger than most colonists, barely 30. With an optimism that some found annoying and others found inspiring. His team drilled down through hundreds of meters of rock until they hit ice. The planet's core was still hot, and that heat had kept water frozen beneath the surface. "It is not pure," Minho reported to Hana. "Heavy metals, sulfur compounds, other contamination, but we can filter it. We can use it." Yuna, the medical officer, worked 18-hour days treating injuries and radiation sickness. She was a stern woman who rarely smiled, but her dedication kept people alive. The colony had limited medical supplies, so she became creative, using plants from the seed banks in ways that Earth doctors never imagined. "We lost another one today," Yuna told Hana after 3 months. "Radiation damage to his organs. I could not save him. Her voice was flat, emotionless, but Hana saw the pain in her eyes. That makes 47 since landing. Hana put a hand on Yuna's shoulder. You have saved hundreds more. Do not forget that. 6 months in, Day completed the first permanent dome on the surface. It was small, barely 50 meters across, but it could protect people from radiation and maintain air pressure. Inside, Minho planted the first seeds in soil he had created by mixing ground rock with organic waste and water. Nothing grew. He tried again with different mixtures. Still nothing. The soil was dead, missing essential minerals and microorganisms that plants needed. Minho sat in the hydroponics section of the underground base, staring at rows of failed crops. The council knew, he said bitterly. They knew we could not grow food here. They sentenced us to slow starvation. But Minho did not give up. He began working with bacteria from Earth, extremophiles that could survive in boiling water or frozen wastelands. He exposed them to Kepler 442c's soil, selecting the ones that did not die, then breeding those, generation after generation, creating new organisms that had never existed before. By month 9, something finally grew. It was ugly, a twisted plant that barely resembled its Earth ancestor, but it lived. Minho showed it to Hana with tears running down his face. It is a beginning, he said. The colony suffered through its first year with determination and loss. Equipment broke down in the harsh conditions. Radiation storms killed anyone caught on the surface without proper shelter. Disease spread through the crowded underground habitats. Some people gave up hope and had to be watched carefully so they would not harm themselves, but others thrived in strange ways. Children born on Earth adapted to the higher gravity and grew strong. Engineers found clever solutions to problems that should have been impossible. Artists painted murals on the tunnel walls, bringing color to the gray world above. On the anniversary of landing, Hana called everyone together in the largest cavern. Nearly 800 people had died in that first year, but 9,200,000 remained. They stood together, a sea of faces illuminated by electric lights. The Galactic Council sent us here to die, Hana said, her voice echoing off stone walls. They expected us to surrender, to lie down and accept extinction. She paused, looking at the faces around her. But we are still here. We have water. We have shelter. We have crops growing in soil that should not support life. We have proven something important. We can survive anything. Someone in the crowd shouted, "What do we call this place? It cannot remain just a number." Hana thought about it. They had planted seeds in dead ground and watched them grow. They had taken nothing and created something. Seedfall, she said. This settlement is Seedfall, because here on this dead world we will make life grow. The name spread through the crowd, repeated until everyone knew it. Seedfall, their home. That night, Day approached Hana with plans for larger domes, underground cities, and systems to process the planet's toxic atmosphere. Minho showed her projections for expanding agriculture. Yuna presented data showing that radiation sickness cases were declining as people learned to protect themselves. June, who had been helping organize the colony's government, joined them. The council believes we are dead or dying. Should we send them a message? Let them know we survived? Hana shook her head. No, let them think what they want. When we are ready, when this world is truly ours, then they will see what humanity can accomplish. Until then we work, we build. We prove them wrong. Above them, beyond meters of protective rock, radiation storms continued to batter the surface. But deep below, humanity endured, and in small domes scattered across the gray wasteland, twisted plants grew in impossible soil. The first year was over. The real work was just beginning. The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure that housed representatives from 40 different alien species. Inside the main hall, thousands of beings sat in curved rows, their various forms creating a bizarre tapestry of shapes and colors. At the center stood a single human, alone under the bright lights. June wore simple clothes, refusing to dress in anything fancy for this trial. His dark hair was neatly combed, and his face remained calm despite what was happening. He had been chosen to represent all of humanity because he never lost his temper, even when others wanted him to fail. Today he would need that calmness more than ever. Ambassador Velthar rose from his seat at the highest point in the chamber. The insectoid leader stood nearly 3 meters tall, his compound eyes reflecting the light in unsettling ways. His mandibles clicked together as he spoke. the sound echoing through the chamber. "We have heard enough evidence," Velthar announced, his translator rendering his speech into something humans could understand. "Humanity has proven itself a danger to the galactic community. They spread too quickly. They consume too much. They refuse to accept the natural limits that govern all civilized species." June wanted to respond, but Velthar raised one of his 4 arms to silence him. Other council members began to speak, each one adding their own complaints about humanity. Councillor Breck, whose species looked like massive reptiles covered in blue scales, stood next. "They adapt to environments where they should not survive. They change their own bodies with medicine and technology. They even alter other planets to suit their needs. This is not natural. This is dangerous," more voices joined in. The pattern became clear to June. This was not a trial. The decision had been made before he even entered the chamber. Everything that happened now was just for show, a way to make their cruelty look like justice. Finally, Velthar allowed June to speak. The human stepped forward, his voice steady and clear. "You call us dangerous because we adapt. You call us reckless because we explore. You punish us for the same qualities that every successful species in this council once possessed." June gestured at the assembled aliens. "Your ancestors also spread across the stars. They also changed themselves and their worlds. The only difference is that you fear we might do it better." The chamber erupted in angry sounds. Velthar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of irritation in his species. "Your words only prove our point," the insectoid leader said. "Humanity is too proud, too ambitious. Therefore, the council has reached its decision. You will be given one of your weeks to prepare. Then all humans will be transported to the planet designated Kepler 442c. You will remain there. Forever." June felt his stomach drop. He knew about Kepler 442c. Everyone in human space knew about it. The planet was a nightmare. A dead world with no atmosphere, constant radiation storms, and temperatures that swung from freezing to boiling. Nothing lived there. Nothing could live there. "You are sentencing us to death," June said quietly. "We are giving you a world of your own," Velthar replied. But there was something like satisfaction in his tone. "What you do with it is your concern. Perhaps you will adapt as you claim to be so skilled at doing." The other council members made sounds that might have been laughter or approval. June looked around the chamber, seeing triumph in alien eyes. They expected humanity to die slowly on that terrible world. They were too civilized to simply execute an entire species, so they had found another way. Back in the human embassy ship, June found Hana waiting for him. She was the chief scientist among the human delegation, a woman in her 50s with gray streaking through her black hair and eyes that missed nothing. "They chose Kepler 442c, June said, sitting down heavily. Hana nodded slowly. "I expected as much. It is the worst option they could have selected. They truly want us gone." She pulled up a display showing the planet. It looked gray and lifeless, covered in dust and rocks. But they made a mistake. June looked at her in surprise. "What mistake?" "That planet will kill us all. They think we will give up. They think we will accept death because the challenge is too great." Hana smiled, though there was no humor in it. "They have never understood humanity. We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have ended us. We crossed Earth's oceans in wooden boats. We split the atom. We reached our moon using computers less powerful than a child's toy." She turned to face June directly. "They have given us the ultimate challenge, and we will surprise them." Over the next week, 10 million humans were selected for transport. They represented every skill humanity possessed. Engineers, farmers, doctors, teachers, artists, and laborers. Families were kept together when possible. Everyone knew this might be the last time they saw Earth or the other human colonies. The ships that would carry them were old transport vessels, barely suitable for the journey. The Galactic Council provided them as part of the exile, but they were not generous. The ships had basic life support and enough supplies to last a year. Advanced weapons were removed. Sophisticated technology was stripped away. The Council wanted to ensure humanity could not threaten them from exile, but they left humanity with tools, with knowledge, and with something more important than either. They left them with hope. June stood with Hana on the last transport to leave. Through the viewport, he could see Earth growing smaller, a blue marble in the endless black. Somewhere on that planet, his sister and her children remained unable to join the exile due to medical conditions. The Council had been clear. Anyone who stayed behind would be watched carefully, their movements restricted. Do you really believe we can survive? June asked. Hana stared at the image of Earth, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Survive? Yes, I know we can survive, but I want more than that. I want to prove them wrong. I want to take their death sentence and turn it into something beautiful. She turned away from the viewport. They think they have seen the last of humanity. Instead, they have created something they will never forget. The transport ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving Earth and the Galactic Council behind. Ahead, somewhere in the darkness, waited Kepler 442c. A dead world that would become humanity's greatest test, or its greatest triumph.